Support for This News is So Gay comes from the LGBTQ Opportunity Fund of the Cleveland Foundation, leveraging philanthropy to empower LGBTQ communities. Welcome to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck, editor of the Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ newsroom. Thanks so much for joining us. Highlighting here at the top of the show for the very last time, it is the Buckeye Flame's 6th birthday, and we are celebrating all month here during Pride Month. We need your support to keep the flame burning bright. So become a recurring donor to our scrappy queer nonprofit newsroom, and it will support our journalism, which includes This News is So Gay. Just head on over to thebuckeyeflame.com and click that word donate. And speaking of This News is So Gay, here's what we've got coming up on this week's brand new episode. So much new data out there on LGBTQ communities and views on LGBTQ equal rights. What do those numbers have to tell us? Gay license plates. Yes, gay license plates. What is that all about? And of course, queer joy. Where is our roundtable finding queer joy in the news right now? Joining us this week to answer those questions and so many more. Technology reporter with coverage revolving around themes of information access, privacy, and politics, all for the 19th, an independent nonprofit newsroom reporting on gender, politics, policy, and power. Jasmine Mithani. Jasmine, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you. And senior staff writer for the Buckeye Flame. Hey, I work there too. And recently a first place winner recipient from the Society of Professional Journalists, H.L. Comeriato. H, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was a banger of an introduction.
Do you want to tell people what you won the award for? Because that's the best part.
Yeah, actually, it's very funny. We were very surprised by this one. I wrote a story about an underground sapphic rave here in Cleveland called Sweet Spot. And Sweet Spot rocks, but I did not think that the straight cis people reading that story were going to say, you know what? Give the Sapphics an award, but they did.
Yeah. Our LGBTQ Reporters Roundtable is now assembled, so let's dive in. Well, my friends, we are almost there. We had a meeting about this morning. We are almost through Pride Month.
We're actively in the trenches of Pride, friends.
Let's check in to see how folks are doing here towards the end of Pride Month. Jasmine, how you holding up?
I am making it through. It feels like there's always this mad dash in Pride, right? Because there's 4 weekends, Friday. So there's like 12 days where everyone tries to put in everything gay for the year.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wish we could spread it out a little more because I'm tired and I can't go to that many events.
What's the big Pride festival near you?
In Los Angeles, we have a million different prides all over the county. Probably the big one is in Hollywood, the big pride. But my personal favorite is Dyke Day, Los Angeles, which is where a bunch of dykes of all, flavors hang out and picnic together. And that was last weekend.
There it is. What did you bring to the picnic?
I brought books.
Stop.
We were only there for an hour. I don't know why, but I took a really nice aesthetic photo with my sapphic book stack.
That's so beautiful.
Amazing. H, I kind of already know the answer, but how are you holding up?
I would like to remind everyone that Pride season is a marathon, not a sprint. And everyone should be getting some electrolytes. Everyone should be taking a little nap. And that's what I'm doing, baby. We are inching our way through. We're in the trenches. We're in the trenches. But I love Pride. There's so much joy. It's all of that, obviously.
And people coming up to us at the tables, because we had this ambitious plan for Pride season to be at at least two Prides every Saturday, which means we are all over the state of Ohio. And we're not totally sure if the return on investment is exactly what we should be doing, but we can't beat the people who come up to the table and just thank us for queer journalism. That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And that's a big part of it, is that we want to be out and about with our community and talking to you all and seeing what you need and what you like and all of the above. It's very important to us.
And they do not hesitate to tell us. Well, there is a ton of new data out there about what folks are feeling about LGBTQ plus related issues. Jasmine, I have been waiting until you returned. I'm like, no, we can't go too in depth because we got data stories. And Jasmine's coming up because you are my data guru. A new Gallup poll out there indicating that support for LGBTQ plus equality has dipped. That has hit the news all over the place, including with your colleague, Orion Rumler. What do we do with those numbers?
I was thinking about this, and I'll be honest, I don't necessarily know what to do, but I know what we shouldn't do, which I think is despair. Because two-thirds of people still support same-sex marriage, and that's an approximation of LGBTQ rights overall. We're surrounded by hate, I think, a lot of the time. In my personal opinion, I'd use this to ground yourself and think about the progress we've made. We've gone from I think it was 19-20% of people supporting same-sex marriage 30, 40 years ago. And also, this is, with data, I'm always really clear about causation and correlation, but this definitely correlates to a lot of hateful rhetoric. And the drive of this drop, which was a couple of percentage points, is Republican attitudes. And that's where we have seen less tolerance. And I think it's really showing that what people are saying about queer people and especially trans people really impacts tolerance.
It really affects the numbers. There's more. There's more data. GLAAD put out some numbers, and there was some Ohio-specific data there. What did GLAAD have to tell us?
Yeah, this is actually interesting because we might be seeing a little bit of a turn here. There were about 1,200 Ohioans who participated in this GLAAD survey, so this is a small sample size, keep in mind. But folks overwhelmingly said that they are feeling like issues related to LGBTQ Ohioans are being used as a political distraction, particularly from affordability and inflation in their daily lives. I think we're seeing Ohioans hitting a wall with affordability and realizing that maybe this anti-LGBTQ rhetoric is not the most important thing in terms of their daily lives and how they're going to vote. So we'll see what that looks like on a larger scale. This is a pretty small sample size, but we're seeing people getting kind of tired of it. They're more likely to say that affordability is an issue than trans people.
Yeah. Can't pay for my next tank of gas. But as long as Ember can't play on her softball team, it should be fine.
Right. Folks are feeling the strain financially, and I think it's putting things into perspective.
Jasmine, I mentioned this a little bit on last week's show when we put out the data that H just described, the overwhelming response we got on social media. People just kept writing over and over, duh, or, this isn't surprising. Can you talk a little bit about why gathering this data and putting out there is important, even if the results aren't surprising?
Yeah, so a couple things, I think, as I mentioned, right? It can really show the relationship between the conversations we're having, the way, people call so-called culture wars, and how that impacts real people and real attitudes. It's also really useful for historical analysis, right? Positive attitudes toward marriage equality peaked in 2022 and have gone downhill since then. And, what has really changed then? That's one of the things that we can see what has impacted the way people think about queer and trans people. I think this ties into what H was saying about affordability and how queer and I think specifically trans communities are scapegoated a lot by politicians. And this is useful to see, when politicians try to go the middle ground, there still is this negative impact. And I think that's something that, especially as we're in a midterm year, I'm thinking about and looking at how people are talking about equality.
Yeah. We've also been seeing this proliferation of regional LGBTQ plus assessments. The most recent one in the Mahoning Valley in northeastern Ohio, kind of near that Pennsylvania border. What are researchers, I know you were there when they revealed the data on the LGBTQ plus assessment in the Mahoning Valley. What are researchers saying that they are actually going to do with this data, or what will be done with this data?
Yeah, we're at an interesting point in terms of data collection and what that's going to look like. In the Mahoning Valley, they got about 400 responses to the Greater Mahoning Valley LGBTQ Community Needs Assessment. And this is part of like an ongoing research series. So there are 3 other regional surveys that either have happened or are going to happen. And the data itself is totally unsurprising. We're seeing things that we already know. Overwhelmingly, LGBTQ people, particularly trans people, are afraid to go to the doctor. When they go to the doctor, they're having to educate their healthcare providers about the types of care that they need. Um, Overwhelmingly, LGBTQ people in the Mahoning Valley are unemployed, underemployed at rates that are bonkers compared to their cisgender straight peers. So the data itself, not surprising. We're even seeing confirmation that LGBTQ people are just largely making less money over their lifetime. They're underinsured, all this stuff that we already know. However, we are in a position where it's very difficult to do meaningful, well-funded work with the data that we're getting. These folks are struggling to fund this work and to get it to the next step, which is gathering these community-centered plans on how to address these things that we already know are issues. If they can develop community-driven recommendations based on this stuff going into the future, then perhaps there are opportunities like this is a great example. My colleague Ben Jodway wrote a great story about the Medina County Health Department and how they partnered with OutSupport, which is an LGBTQ group, to help deliver some smoking cessation resources, like directly to queer people. And they did some billboards together. So there are opportunities for these partnerships when the money is there and when we're allowed to focus on things that include diversity, equity, and inclusion, air quotes. So we're in a difficult position, but this data doesn't go away, right? So we have this until we are ready and we have some funding to make a real difference for LGBTQ Ohioans.
I think that is a really good example. And they had a banner ad on our site advertising smoking cessation for queer people. And people clicked on it a lot. And they said they got a lot of clients out of that. I want to believe there are more examples that are connecting some of this data to verifiable actions. I get a little nervous as we write more and more articles on new data coming out that funders just love funding the collection of data. And I kind of feel like maybe stop until we do something with the data that we have. But current data is always a good thing.
One of the things too with data is, they fund data and then we get data and then a lot of grants. This is a huge issue for queer organizations. They want to see the impact. How many people did you serve, right? You're already working really hard in an under-resourced community that maybe there are inroads, there isn't a community organization that people can go to. And that actually is a barrier as well, because why would you fund something that would help 200 people versus something that would help 2,000 people? And one of those things is that those 200 people would not get help any other way.
Right. Right. Oh, there's so much work to do. We're going to stay in this realm of technology for a second as we move on to a few more stories. Jasmine, I apparently have been living under a rock, which H actually knows is true half the time. I had never even heard of a Nudify app. I didn't know that was a thing.
And you know what? I love that for you. I wish I could rewind to before I understood what that was.
I know. I was like, I want to join you under this rock, actually.
It's very cozy there. There are many pets. But I am now kind of horrified that I was so out of the loop. For those who may be in the same boat and under the same rock as me, or just to update folks who have heard of these, what's going on with Nudify apps?
All right. So nudification, not a verb that I ever conceived of using.
So evil.
Exactly. It's a form of digital sexual violence. It's Nudify apps. That's often how they are marketed. They're a way to create sexually explicit, non-consensual AI deepfakes. And often they're using things like face swapping, a photo of somebody who's fully clothed with somebody who has no clothes on, usually stealing images from porn. And nudification apps, right, are the kind that offer that service, often for a fee. It's very profitable. A lot of social media companies ban the advertisement of these services, but sometimes they slip through. And the reason that there's been this really big focus in the larger fight against digital sexual violence on notification apps is because they're often the most like accessible way. You don't need a lot of technical knowledge, and they're often a little bit more accessible to kids because of that. And I think we've all seen stories of instances of deepfake abuse in, elementary, high school things where, not to excuse children's behavior, but a lot of the time when I speak with experts, they describe kids as seeing it as like a prank or definitely
Mm.
something hurtful, but they don't realize that they're making, illegal content that's child sexual abuse material. And now here's maybe the light. Minnesota has become the first state to ban notification basically as a function. You cannot have an app that notifies in the state of Minnesota. And they've been pushing for that because they want to attack these apps specifically. I don't know how it'll work in practice. It goes into effect, I believe, on August 1st. So I'll be tracking that and seeing if it actually makes a difference in the lives of Minnesotans.
Notification. I can't believe that's a word. I'm also going to start a new fundraiser for the Buckeye Flame where I start selling vacation rentals from here under my rock because I think that it would actually do very well for us because I don't know half of this stuff. But one thing I do know about, and we are pivoting wildly right this second, we have to talk about gay license plates. This is a fascinating case. What is going on with gay license plates?
These damn license plates. So Ohio. In Ohio, there's like a program where you can get a vanity plate and customize it, and the money goes toward a program. And it's a cute idea in theory, right? But we're butting up against some free speech stuff because there are very few rules, and there's a very small office of people who are responsible for okaying all of these vanity plates. Bless them. I think there are literally like 4 people in this office.
Sounds about right.
So in like 2003, someone tried to get a plate that said road rage, and they denied it, effectively because it felt threatening. People die in road rage incidents pretty frequently, so they rejected that. This person sued. And so there is a set of standards for these vanity plates, and you basically can't have anything that is, quote unquote, profane, obscene, sexually explicit, or scatological. So sorry to the guy who wanted poop with like 5 O's in it.
Yeah.
He did not get it because it is against the rules. But those rules are just interpreted by these people who are like doing their best at this office. And it's actually not going that well. So last year, a Lakewood resident named William Saki sued the Ohio BMV, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, because in the lead up to Pride Month, he wanted his license plate to just say gay, G-A-Y, gay, which is cute and fun, except they rejected it and said that it was like inappropriate or invalid. And he tried a couple other ones. He tried queer, he tried homo. And they rejected those ones as well. But at this point, he's getting curious. So he also attempts to register plates with like anti-LGBTQ slurs. So he tried no gays, no homos, and no insert whichever slur you're feeling this Pride Month.
He tried a lot.
He tried a lot. He was doing some like trial and error here, And all of those were allowed. So now he's in this position where he is unable to get like queer, gay, or homo in the way that we all would say it as, having reclaimed these words and empowering. He's not able to get those, but he is able to get something that says no homo or no gays. Last year, he sued. The BMV, they were like, let's drop the suit.
We'll just give you the gay.
We messed up. We will give you this gay license plate. We totally messed up. We get where you're coming from. Let's drop the suit. And then they did not do what they said they were going to do. So Mr. Saki, Lakewood resident, is suing again. He's filed this second lawsuit. And it's actually interesting because it also could open the door for more anti-LGBTQ speech as well
Yeah.
if we pull away some of these rules, and we'll just see how it goes.
Okay.
That's where we're at. It's extremely interesting in terms of free speech and how we are allowed to express our identities as LGBTQ people and how that's limited.
Yeah. Because of the type of work that we do, we don't often get to see people's facial expressions when they experience our stories. So seeing Jasmine navigate through that whole story was amazing.
And I was going to say, this is like the strongest argument for like a vodcast, I think. I feel like I went on an emotional journey.
You
Yeah.
really did. I loved it.
I went on an emotional journey reporting it. Like, what in the...
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I swear, listeners and panelists, we are going to get to stories about queer joy, but we do have a couple more slightly heavier stories, and more than slightly. Jasmine, you have been doing so much work on the gap between domestic violence services and the funding for domestic violence services, and then all of those survivors who get caught in that gap or fall through that gap. What do we need to know about that reporting right now?
Services that have been addressing gender-based violence, those have been underfunded for a really long time. But what you need to know is that with the new admin, these organizations are in the crosshairs because domestic violence and sexual assault service organizations, there's some of the groups that are kind of hit the hardest by the war on so-called woke gender ideology or illegal DEI. And it has made it really difficult for these places to do their job. And in
Mhm.
addition, with funding, a lot of the funding comes from the Department of Justice, and they haven't distributed $150 million that they were
Oof.
supposed to give last year. And they just started accepting applications for this year. But what's missing is last year, the Department of Justice accepted applications for every program except the one dedicated to supporting the LGBTQ plus community. And that is such a loss because this is one area where queer people aren't better than the straights.
Right.
Intimate partner violence is such a huge issue in our community, and there's a lot of stigma around it. And we're seeing a lot of places, because of these executive orders, there's trying to shape what does a survivor who deserves help look like? Someone who's not an immigrant. It's someone who, in research, they've pointed out that, there's the ideal victim is like a white cisgender heterosexual woman. And and so this is a really big thing. A lot of organizations are really hurting right now. I think especially organizations that have been unwilling to call queer people. I think a lot of places, I've spoken about this before, have just, taken down pride flags on their site, taken down resources. But a lot of people look for those things to know that it's a safe place to go. You don't want to have to go somewhere and then have an advocate question, like, what do you mean intimate partner violence? You're a lesbian, women can't abuse each other, or something like that, which not true, putting it out there, not true. So, there is always, for our listeners too, I want to say, there is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And I also found, there's the network La Red. I have not spoken with them yet, but they run a 24-hour hotline that is specifically tailored for the queer community. And I just wanted to share that as an option. If you search it, Network La Red hotline, you should be able to find it.
Some resources out there. All the attention here in Ohio when we talk about LGBTQ plus legislation, it feels disproportionately goes to the bill that would effectively ban drag in public and other forms of just being trans in public. And it certainly is critical that we amplify that bill, but it's one of like 22, 23 different anti-LGBTQ plus bills. There are so many out there. I want to talk about one of them that flew under the radar that you wrote about. Tell everyone about House Bill 172.
Yeah, so this bill would eliminate a program for Ohio's youth that allows kids who are 14 and older to get some temporary outpatient like therapy and help. It only permits 6 sessions or treatment for up to 30 days. So this is a little window where young people have privacy to disclose some really difficult things that are happening to them. And overwhelmingly, sexual violence experts are just terrified by this law. They say that this window is very often the only opportunity that young people have to confide in like a trained and trusted adult about abuse that they're experiencing in their own homes, and particularly at the hands of their own guardians. So HB 172 would eliminate this program called the Ohio Mobile Response and Stabilization Services Program. And if that goes away, this program is for young people who are at worst of the worst type situations. Advocates are telling us that young people are only using this program when they have nowhere else to go. And the only help that they're going to get is from agencies designed to help them escape abuse. And for LGBTQ youth, this is even more frightening. About 40% of LGBTQ people say that they experience sexual violence before they even turn 18. And about a quarter of all LGBTQ people under the age of 18 say that they experience frequent physical or emotional abuse at home as a direct result of being LGBTQ. So this is putting them in an even more difficult position. Additionally, most child sexual abuse and child abuse in general is gonna be perpetrated by someone a child knows. And this is even worse when you're in foster care. And there are about 16,000 kids in foster care that really need access to this type of, like, this very small window of confidential care, because about 35% of these 16,000 Ohioans living in foster care are saying that they experience some type of abuse or neglect while under the care of the state, while under the care of guardians compensated by the state. And even worse, about 60% of all young people who experience sex trafficking are trafficked by their own parent or guardian. So I'm saying this to say, I'm saying this because this is what sexual violence experts have been telling me over and over and over again. But I'm saying this to say that overwhelmingly, there is a huge group of young people here who cannot trust the adults that they're supposed to be able to trust in their lives to keep them safe from sexual violence and any type of violence. And this bill, this could make things really, really difficult for young people who are already in a difficult position. And it is very much so worth mentioning, in my opinion, because I believe in accountability, that a co-sponsor of this bill, Republican Representative Rodney Creech, has been credibly accused of child sexual assault and child sexual abuse. His colleagues know this. He's been investigated. And as far as I know, he is still a co-sponsor on this bill that would keep young people from disclosing the type of abuse that he's allegedly been involved in. And that's all allegedly.
It's also just so remarkable, and also it's not in any way remarkable, that the premise of getting rid of these services is that there are mental health professionals who might know that the youth is trans before their parents do, right?
Yes, I'm so sorry. That's the context for this, right? This is a part of this push of these parents' rights bills that we talk about over and over again, that a parent's right to know whether or not their child is identifying as trans or gender nonconforming outside of the home in some way. That's the idea here.
From a bill sponsor who, Jonathan Newman, a mega church pastor who is on the record saying that he does not believe that trans people exist. So,
But I want to say the kind of work that is being attacked, right? That very short period of time where people can get help. I know you noted this in the article, but that's suicide prevention. That's homelessness prevention.
Absolutely.
It prevents more harm too. And I think it's all absolutely connected. And also the other thing I wanted to say too is I know that there are some issues with discrimination in the movement, but for the most part, right? Like every domestic violence advocate I've spoken to, like they don't care. If somebody is hurt, they're going to help them. Ideally, that's the case. They're not asking for anyone's passports, or what gender marker you have. So just kind of like the whole foundation of the idea being like they might disclose is just, it feels so far from the reality of like someone who is like going to a rape crisis center needing help. I'm just wow.
it's a wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
We will continue to keep our eyes on that as well. But for right this second, everyone, you are listening to This News is So Gay. I'm your host, Ken Schneck from the Buckeye Flame, Ohio's LGBTQ plus newsroom. Joining me this week, Jasmine Mithani from the 19th and H.L. Comeriato, also from the Buckeye Flame. By the by, if you are not subscribed to This News is So Gay, what on earth are you waiting for? Subscribe to This News is So Gay right this very second on your favorite podcasting app so that new episodes automatically make their way to you. Well, it is time, folks, and we need it quite badly. It is time for Glitter Bomb. This is where our roundtable shares stories of queer joy that they are seeing covered there in the news. So let's set off a glitter bomb. Jasmine, give us a story of queer joy that you're seeing out there in the world.
So this intersects with my personal life, which is I finally got around to seeing Bound, the incredible film by the Wachowskis.
Oh,
And
yes.
I saw for the 30th anniversary of the film, Lily Wachowski was saying that the thing that she was most proud of is quote, all the eggs I broke on this film. And talked about like the importance of like queer and trans cinema made by people who are still figuring out their identity and how that really helps people. And it was just, it's so interesting to see that movie now, like knowing what I do now about the Wachowskis. And it's really lovely to think that like that's been a point for a lot of people to like come out to themselves.
Yeah. 30 years. Oh my gosh. None of the three of us were even alive when that first came out. H, give us a story of queer joy.
That got me good. My story of queer joy is directly from the trenches of Pride, because however difficult it is, I used to work a job where I would cry because my manager would just deny all my time off and I would not get to go to any prides the entire season. And now part of my job is to be there and be present with all of you.
You have no choice now. Yeah.
Now actually it is my job now. So big switch up. But you have to be intentionally grateful, everybody. I'm saying this to other trans people. I'm saying this to other queer people in this moment. Go to a pride if you can, safely. Do something with other LGBTQ people that you love. Celebrate yourself, because it's been a slog of a month, but we kicked off our Pride season at the Buckeye Flame with Pride in the CLE in Cleveland. And we see, because we live here, we see so many people that we know and that we love and that support us. And it's unfortunately like kind of amazing. Even though I'm like on the clock, seeing you all through my camera lens and seeing you all smile back at me in these photos that I get to take is so cool. So my queer joy story is my own gallery from Pride in the CLE.
That's I loved that gallery. You got some great shots in that one.
I did. And I felt that I captured everyone in a way that was fun and important, and everybody felt good. You know, it's you're not always getting that with another photojournalist, right? You're not always like, I'm showing folks photos that I take of them and they're saying, oh my gosh, I love that. And then it ends up in the gallery. And that's something very different from how other photojournalists operate. It's something that I do for and with other LGBTQ people, because that's the way we do it.
Also, I'm excited because I don't even think we've talked about it on the podcast, but we sent out disposable cameras all over the state for a project we called Gaby's First Pride. So we sent them out to folks who wanted a disposable camera for their first ever Pride celebration. So we should start getting those back soon, and we will see.
I have one returned. It is so cute. And I'm telling you, the children are yearning for analog. And we're excited to accommodate. Like, we're going to go develop all of these, and we're so excited to share them with you.
Gaby's First Pride. And finally, Lonely Planet has compiled a ranking of the 10 best gayborhoods in the United States. And it includes spots like the Castro in San Francisco, North Halsted in Chicago, and the Bywater neighborhood in New Orleans. I've been told to try to slur that together.
That was bonkers. That
How I said it?
pronunciation.
Oh,
That was
okay. I don't
crazy.
know.
That was
New
a man from New
Orleans.
Jersey trying to say New
Yes, it
Orleans.
was. Well, which is sad because my sister went to Tulane in New Orleans, so she would be pretty pissed at me right now. But for this week's quick queer culture question, this is a little bit different. Last week, we asked our panelists their queer vacation destinations. This week, a little bit more specific. I want your favorite gayborhood. Jasmine, your favorite gayborhood out there.
Okay, real talk. I was thinking a lot about gentrification with this answer.
Same.
I was trying to think, and I do think there's just, most neighborhoods have a history of gentrification, but my favorite that I wanted to shout out is Silver Lake in Los Angeles. There's a couple of places. There's a gay leather bar, and there's like a gay leather store, and there's a couple of places. It's kind of mostly been taken over. There's like an intelligentsia there now by hipsters, but there's this bar that is still there, the historical location called the Black Cat. And there it's the site of a police sting that was turned riot. And it was 2 years before Stonewall. It was a bunch of police officers infiltrated the crowd on New Year's Eve. And then at 12:01, made arrests of people for kissing in public.
There it is.
And I've seen the plaque, and it's not as active of an area now. There's just like a couple of gay bars, but it's cool that there's this small community and this like local landmark.
Silver Lake. H, give us your favorite gayborhood.
Yeah, so growing up in the Midwest, it's the first time you go to the Castro is pretty incredible. You grow up not really understanding or believing that there is a place like that. And even when you see images of it or you hear people talk about it, being in the Castro is something different. It's pretty incredible. However, my favorite gayborhood is my own gayborhood, Hingetown in Cleveland, Ohio, because I think you should all be going to look for your own gayborhoods and building your own gayborhoods. My other favorite gayborhood is one that I accidentally created by myself when I lived in a neighborhood and suddenly 5 other gay people lived there too. And then there were more, and then there were more. And that is the joy. That is the joy of being a gay person. Go find your own gayborhood in your own small city, in the Rust Belt, in the Midwest, in the Pacific Northwest, wherever you are. They're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Well, I want to tell our listeners that the correct answer, and H was close, but not quite there. The correct answer is the Gordon Square Arcade, which is where the Buckeye Flame is located. And it's like all queer businesses. And we didn't intend for that hallway to be as gay as it is, but it's pretty damn gay.
That's what I mean. If you are yourself out in public, other people show up to do the same thing.
There it is. There it is. Well, we certainly want to hear what you both are working on. Jasmine, what's coming up for you?
More super fun stuff like domestic violence in the queer community, but also the people who are helping victim survivors who are queer. That was a tough one to put a positive spin on.
Yeah, but you're doing the work. You're doing the work. H, what have you got cooking up?
I also have some sinister things, a few sinister things on the back burner, but don't I always, you know?
You do.
I really do. That's just who I am. You will be seeing a cute one from me soon on the Ruby Girls, who are a drag troupe from Dayton. And these girlies have been raising money for LGBTQ causes and nonprofits, and particularly HIV/AIDS research and just community-based resources for like 40 years at this point. Yeah, and they're pretty incredible. So that's a fun one. They actually were awarded an official Ohio historical marker. So you'll be seeing that from me soon too.
Which is pretty incredible because almost all the queer historical markers were cut by Doge, but
Yeah,
they were able to get some of them back. So that will be a great story to read. And that, my friends, is all the time that we have for this week's episode of This News is So Gay. I want to thank our roundtable. Jasmine, always, always a pleasure hearing what you're working on.
Thank you so much. I love being here.
We love having you. H.L. Comeriato, I'll give you a ride back to the newsroom if you want one.
Oh my gosh, thanks. Wow.
Anytime. Thanks for doing what you do. I'm Ken Schneck, editor of the Buckeye Flame. And if you liked this episode of This News is So Gay, please share it with a friend. Subscribe so that you do not miss out on our next episode. Send an email on over to editor@thebuckeyeflame.com. That's me, to let us know your thoughts, and rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. This News is So Gay is a product of the Buckeye Flame, a nonprofit newsroom. Become a recurring donor today for as little as $12.50 a month, which truly enables programming just like this podcast from a scrappy queer newsroom like the Buckeye Flame. In the meantime, read LGBTQ+ news, share the stories from LGBTQ+ reporters, and support the work of LGBTQ+ newsrooms. Until next week, friends.